This is Pivot Perspectives with Chris O'Byrne, the show that takes you around the world to share interviews with some of the most successful and relevant people on the planet. Hear their stories and get the most important business lessons they've learned on their road to success, and get exclusive access on how to implement their success into your life and business. Pivot Perspectives is brought to you by the Strategic Advisor Board and your host, Chris O'Byrne.
So welcome, Kamin. I am so happy to have you here today.
Thank you, Chris. I really am excited to be with you.
Well, thank you. I'm going to go way back and ask you, what is a story from your childhood that you feel was instrumental in developing into who you are today?
It's such a great question because I'm going to come at it kind of from the negative side of things. I grew up in a family outside of DC, and we were like the only Black family in the neighborhood, and all of our neighbors had horses and things. And so phrases that I heard as a kid were, we were robbing Peter to pay Paul, or, I always knew that money was tight, especially with 4 kids. And the only thing that I ever remember outside of that, rob Peter to pay Paul, that my mom said, or either parent said, was, don't file bankruptcy. And I didn't even know what that meant. I was a teenager, right? So fast forward after my military career, it's actually the second to the last day, and I go in to get my final check. And I had always wanted to be in business. And so that's primarily why I was leaving, was to start a business. I had already started one, but I was very leveraged. And so when I went to get that check, I had saved up my vacation. I had taken money to stay in, so I knew I had to pay him back, but I had put that in my budget. And the government had taken pretty much all but a fraction of what I was expecting. And I remember saying, I'm going to have to file bankruptcy. Now, I don't remember having that thought prior. It just literally was a subroutine underneath, waiting for its opportunity. Like, anytime we put a don't in front of something, it's like, file. What does that mean? And so fast forward 14 months, I ended up filing. And then a few months later, in a 3-day period, Chris, I got the bankruptcy discharge, the foreclosure of 2 home notices, and an IRS audit.
My goodness.
And it took my breath away. And literally, I thought, I can't survive this. And I remember walking into the kitchen and standing in the doorway, and there were knives across the way. And I thought, I could just end this. I don't think I can survive this. And in a flash of an instance, I realized I had rehearsed, I'm going to have to file bankruptcy, until it became live in my life. And I knew if I rehearsed the thought, I can't survive this, I would create some momentum that I wouldn't be able to take back. And so I made a vow that day, even if the thought came in, I wouldn't entertain it. But that began my quest. If I could create the thought, how do I uncreate it? How do I shift it? Other people have survived things. How do I do that? And so that became my quest of learning how to restructure my own money DNA, so to speak, into something that would be prosperous.
So tell me about your time in the military, because that's a pretty significant piece to the whole equation here of who you are.
Well, I had a great 9 years in the military. It was a little challenging at the beginning, as the first African-American female helicopter pilot, but I was only the second one to get my commission out of the military. And the first one had done it 7 years earlier, Brenda Robinson. And so for me, I was a scared little 22-year-old, lived a very sheltered life. So I had to learn to toughen up and kind of grow up very quickly. But I loved it, and I hadn't wanted to fly. So that was kind of a whim, decision, and then backed up by kind of a spiritual kind of knowing that that's what I should try. But the opportunity to fly in the Navy and the opportunity to travel the world was something that I really loved, and I got to experience so many amazing things and get as many ratings as I could as a maintenance pilot, as an instructor pilot, as a standardization pilot, and being able to show, like, really own that's what I was supposed to be doing at that time in my life.
Do you have any favorite moments from when you were in?
There are a few. There was one moment when I was in flight school, and I was going out with the weather pilot, which meant that we were the first to launch that day. And so we were coming back just after 7 a.m. And I just remember coming back and just feeling like, man, that I've already done what I needed to do today, and flown, and it was in helicopters. And so it was just this feeling of just acknowledging myself for what I had created. I think one other one is at my very last at sea deployment, I got to plan the operation. It was a seven ship, 3 helicopters. We were exchanging. The new ship was coming on. We were getting ready to go home, and in the Mediterranean. And so we were offloading groceries to the fleet. And so it was just a fun day. And as we were coming back to the ship, the other ships had their crew up on deck and saluted us. And it was a great way to complete a 6-month deployment and go home back to the States.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. So then when you got out of the military, what came next?
Well, really going into business for myself. I really had wanted that, and I wanted to experience creating something. And unfortunately, I didn't know what I know now, that we can choose a vision, but the strategy may change. The company and the type of business I chose wasn't really for me. It's not on them. It just wasn't a fit for me. And so I didn't thrive in it. I also wasn't prepared coming out of the military. I really didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what it meant that the military was taking care of everything. You know, we got paid for housing. Our medical was taken care of. You know, we got stipends as pilots. And so to lose that in a day and then be on my own and not really know how to take care of myself as well as I could. And I think, we see that in a lot of military coming out, like we're used to being told kind of what to do and when to do it and how to show up. And then we have to kind of grow up and take care of it. But it was after my business failed and the bankruptcy and the foreclosures, I had to really reassess my life. And from there, I went back to things that I loved. What do I, asking myself, like, really, what am I good at? What do I love to do? At the time, it was computers. And I had grown up with the first PCs and mainframe computers. For those kids who don't know what those are, you can Google it. And so I went into computers and learned HTML and got a corporate job as a web developer, and then grew my corporate career up to a director in one company and from director to vice president in another.
I remember, because when I first went into school, one of my classes was in Fortran. So when you said subroutines earlier, I'm like, yeah, I can tell she was in tech. And our first programming was actually on those punch cards for the mainframe. It was such a different time. So what inspired you to start your current business? And tell us what your current business is, what you're doing now.
So I am blessed that I get to coach a lot of coaches. I like to say coaches coach, and executives and business owners really on their mindset and wealth mindset. I get to use the things that I used in my own life on how to turn my life around or achieve what I wanted to, and help others do that. And so I like to say that I've been coaching since elementary school. So we had We were, one of few people probably at that time that had two phone lines back in the day, because we have four kids. We could be on the calls, and usually it was me trying to help people with their problems. And so I have always done that. I love helping people. And so a big part of my heart is to help people have greater impact in their life. And as a part of, learning to change my life, I'm a voracious learner. And so I love to take what I learn and help it make sense to other people so that they can see themselves differently. And so being a coach now full time for over 10 years has just been just a joy for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I can tell you're a voracious learner because you have several graduate degrees. And
Yes,
I don't know if you wanted. Yes, you definitely have collected them. They'll all be listed in the about the author page, and people will get to hear about all of those. It's impressive. Now, in your work as a coach, do you have let's say, a specific framework or methodology?
Well, let's see. That's a great question. Framework. What I'm really doing with clients is helping to tune into who they really are. So some of the frameworks that I use some of the assessments that come from positive psychology, like the VIA Institute's character strengths. And I love to point out to people who they are, or the YOS, and really helping people understand their why at the core of who they are. And then it's really, I also, in the collection of things, is I'm also a clinical hypnotherapist. And so the ability to go in, not from make people cluck like a chicken, but to to go in and really go in and find the beliefs. So if that subroutine I had, don't file bankruptcy, was in there, other people have their own beliefs that are stopping them from the fullness of their life. And so for me, being able to use those tools to then clear the way and then help them identify who they are from their strengths, why they're here, and then move into whatever it is they'd like to create, and realize it's just a step-by-step approach. That to me is some of the greatest things that I get to do every day.
Oh, yeah, that sounds pretty marvelous.
It's fun.
So looking back, who have been some of the, let's say, key influences or mentors that have influenced your life?
Wow, there's so many. When I
List
think
as many as you want.
Oh, good. There are a
Yeah.
lot of them. I think, when I think of the foundational mentors beyond my family, because there's some amazing family members who have, like my mom and dad and my sister and brothers and whatever. But foundationally, at the heart of what I do is kind of spiritual psychology. And so I have one of my masters is in spiritual psychology from the University of Santa Monica. And Doctors Ron and Mary Hulnick have had such a huge influence on my life, because it was the first time that I really got to see who the true Kamin was, not the masked Kamin, the mission Kamin, whatever. And so that really laid me into that framework of kind of seeing the essence of a human being and who they are and seeing their greatness. Another one would be, I've been blessed to coach with Steve Chandler, who they call the godfather of coaching. And I've been with him for many years and written, my latest book is with him, Wealth Creation for Coaches. And just being able to expand my mind and see how to kind of have a laid back approach to creating prosperity, and doing it from a relationship based and even a spiritual base has been fun. I would add in here also, because I have now a PhD in positive neuropsychology. So the positive psychologists like Martin Seligman or Carol Dweck I'm a huge fan of Barbara Fredrickson. And then now on this neuroscience side, Jonathan Haidt and others, and now a new one, Dr. Larry Farwell, he's written a book called The Science of Creating Miracles, that kind of, for me, put the neuroscience and quantum physics and the spirituality, wove that beautifully together. And so there have been many. I've got, business mentors like Dan Vega, and Gay Hendricks has had a huge influence on my life. And so it's just, like I said, I gather information, synthesize it, help make sense, and then share it back to my clients and the world.
That's a great use of that. Now, you don't just do coaching, you also do speaking as well, right?
Yes, I do. I'd love to speak.
So do you have a signature talk that you give, or is it varied depending on the audience?
It's varied. And at the heart of it, it's always going to come back to mindset and kind of what do we rehearse? Because that's what I've lived, and really helping people understand that whatever we rehearse, we actually create. And so let's create consciously. And our ability to create consciously can really transform our lives. And that's kind of my next phase mission, is really to try to look at kind of generational and industry poverty from a different way. That education, if I look at myself, if you know, there's no judgment on this. I come from slaves, right? So slavery was the thing, but the ability for us to see that, same look and feel of a human. My family is all lots of education. And so my mother got her doctorate at 61. My
Wow.
dad had an MBA from Stanford. And so throughout our lineage is a lot of education that was important. And it's just that many people don't know what they don't know. They don't have access to how to change their mindset, how to thrive in a new way, how to look at their gifts and abilities and monetize them. That's really kind of my superpower, is monetizing strengths. And so that, to me, and being able to share that message with audiences, that they can transform their lives from the inside out, their wealth from the inside out, their relationships, whatever. It starts with us inside.
So then, looking back on your journey, entrepreneurial or otherwise, what would you say have been one or two of the most valuable lessons you've learned?
So many. I think one that really comes to mind right away is as educated as I grew up in, it was like, do things the right way all the time. There wasn't as much of a learning, like we had to be perfect little kids. And so when I had challenges, I didn't understand that mistakes are just learning lessons. I took them personally. And that taking that personally then meant it delayed my recovery, because then I was judging myself and seeing myself as a failure and living in shame and guilt and worry and all of that, versus like, oh, that just didn't work. And so one of the things that I share with people a lot of times is to put a hyphen in that mistake, and, hyphen take. And when we think of the arts, they freely make mistakes, right? In the films, let's take 135. Okay, let's do it again. Or musicians, some of the best work that has happened, it comes from a miss hyphen take. And so our ability for us as ordinary people to realize, I don't have to take it seriously. It's just that particular strategy didn't work. Let's try it. What's something new I can try? And so me kind of adopting that vision versus strategy. The vision holds steady, the strategy can change. A testing orientation to life and a learning orientation to life have been some of the things that have really allowed me to also then as I mentioned in my last book, Wealth Creation for Coaches, we talked about the stair-step approach. Really, many times we try to leap too far and our limiting beliefs can get in the way when we do that. But if we take just a little baby step, then we can get some wins and create momentum.
Oh, that's really good. So go along with that, do you have any, say, parting words of advice that you'd like people to know?
Well, I love that. I mean, I think I would say for everyone, it's like, what would you like to create? And then listen for the thought right behind that. What has stopped you from creating it up until this point? What's that voice? I was just working with a client, and one of my other favorite influences in books is The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. And they didn't really understand resistance. And I said, resistance is that thing. Resistance is hiding resistance, right? Resistance is going to confuse you on resistance so that you don't realize that resistance is the barrier for us to actually move forward with our lives as art, our creativity, our genius, our zones of genius. And so whatever it is that you want to create, listen for the voices that say no. And then ask, whose voice is it? Is it really yours? Is it a teacher that told you couldn't draw or sing or write, or like for me, even be a coach, right? And the ability for us to realize that voice is created, and to set that voice aside and take one small action, it's gold. We can do anything if we just take that next baby step.
That is some powerful advice. Thank you. Oh, so how can people find out more about you?
Well, you can go to kaminsamuel.com, and you can always reach out to me through there. I have a lot of videos on YouTube, and my books, everything is accessible from my website, kaminsamuel.com.
Perfect. I'll make sure that's available for people. Thank you so much. I mean, I really appreciate you being on. It was a little bit last moment, and some valuable information today.
Well, thank you so much. And it's really an honor to be here. And I really appreciate this opportunity. It's just been fun having a conversation with you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Bye now.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Pivot Perspectives with your host, Chris O'Byrne. Please leave your feedback and visit strategicadvisorboard.com to get the latest and greatest business advice on the planet. Follow us on social media for updates, and we will see you on the next episode.